Hello and welcome to One Trek Mind. I'm Michael.
And I'm Raptor.
And today we're going to be reviewing the second episode of Lower Decks, Shades of Green. We begin the mission with Tendi and her sister on a secret ops mission on the Blue Orion planet, which turns out to just be a little tabletop simulation, which I really enjoyed seeing a simulation being used this way. I don't think I ever have on Star Trek, and it seems to make a lot more sense when it comes to planning something of this sort rather than doing a full-blown simulation in person.
It's kind of like the big table they used to use in Enterprise at the back of the bridge.
Exactly, just using holographic imagery to set up your plan. But the two share a cute moment while they're planning the invasion, and it is made clear that something is going on with Tendi's sister, doesn't know what exactly is going on just yet. Here we move back to the Cerritos crew, who are on Targalis 9, which is a new member of the Federation after getting rid of all forms of capitalism, which in some ways I don't like how it's put here, because it almost seems like to join the Federation, you have to get rid of capitalism, which we know is not the case. Or maybe it is, because the Ferengi aren't part of the Federation, right?
No, we can discuss that afterwards, because I think that whole thing was very interesting from a Star Trek lore perspective, and also sort of how that would actually go down in a real life situation as well.
And yeah, I'm actually curious to get your thoughts on all that. But Boimler is trying some new management techniques after having done his usual Boimler way, where apparently he gives out pointers to his ensigns.
I think it's clear he's taken this from the doppelganger we met in episode 1, considering he's trying to grow a Riker stash as well.
It's like clearly he can't grow out the full beard, so he's really trying with a mustache that's not working. But upon Mariner's suggestion, he decides to take a more relaxed approach and gives his ensigns an hour off so they can all just go out and have a little bit of fun. We go back to Tendi as she spies on her sister's logs and finds out that her sister is pregnant. And from here they are summoned before the Pirate Queen, who is very unhappy with the war between House Tendi and House Azure, or the Blue Orions, who are now just trying to call themselves something a little more fancy. And things must be settled with a race through a dangerous nebula using old sailing ships. We then go back to find out that Boimler's ensigns have not returned, so they head for the Museum of Friendship, and upon arriving there find out that the ensigns have been kidnapped by a sect of people who are not happy with the new order that's happening. They still want to keep capitalism and their wealth and everything. And then they get to go on a quick little hover car chase. Back at the race, as soon as it begins, Tendi is being overly cautious to the point of almost being rather annoying, in my opinion, just because of her sister being pregnant. And the actual solar sailors look very neat. They really reminded me of the Bajoran solar ships.
Again, something I wanted to talk about after we summarize the episode.
Back on the Cerritos, you have these short scenes between T'Lyn and Rutherford. He's doing repairs at a very slow rate. T'Lyn is seemingly trying to help, but is almost like frustrating Rutherford at how quickly she's doing everything, which is revealed at the end to be him intentionally trying to go slowly so that when Tendi comes back, they could do it together. Tendi decides to instigate a mutiny because her sister's not listening, wants to be at the forefront of all the action, so they execute a gentle, supportive mutiny, or a cutiny, as they call it. And this is right after the Blue Orions start to play dirty and fire on their ship. This ends up going terribly as the Blue Orions tear one of their sails in half and crash lands their ship just before Tendi reveals the truth that she knows about her sister's pregnancy.
But it is also soon after revealed that everybody knows about the pregnancy apart from Tendi, and her sister was deliberately keeping it a secret because there's some Orion tradition about training the next Queen of the Winter
Mistress of the Winter constellation.
Yes, and her sister was trying to prevent her having to stay, basically. So actually, everyone already knew, and she was just overreacting.
It was all out of love. They wanted her to go back to Starfleet because they knew that's what she wanted to do, which is a very cute moment. When Boimler and Mariner catch up to their ensigns, it looks like they are dead or dying, but turns out they used one of Boimler's pointers to just make it appear as such, so they could... Honestly, I don't really know what the plan was there. They were just like, oh, we're gonna pretend to die, and then what? I don't really know. To be honest, it seemed like a pretty bad time to use that particular pointer, but hey, I guess it worked because their captors just ran off. Back on the Cerritos, T'Lyn fully repairs the shuttle, which is when Rutherford gets upset about this, and it is revealed that T'Lyn also was doing this just to get in some social time with Rutherford, because she also misses Tendi. It was actually a very sweet moment between the two of them. And just when it seems like the Blue Orions are going to succeed in taking back the treasure, Tendi really pushes their ship to the limits, and they manage to board them. They do a quick little sword fight to get back the treasure and blow up their other ship so that they could potentially tie and they can both win, and neither of them end up losing the wealth of either house. But this does backfire when the Pirate Queen says, actually, you both lose, and you both lose your wealth, so get fucked.
It's that scene in Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, isn't it? You lose! Good day, sir!
Pretty much. But upon losing their wealth, Tendi is able to rejoin Starfleet, where she reunites with Rutherford and the rest of the crew. And then they use the wealth of Targalis 9 that they don't want anymore to give to House Tendi so that they aren't in as bad a situation as previously thought. And that is pretty much where they end the episode. Just a nice little reunion between all the former ensigns, now... what are they, lieutenant commanders at this point?
Yes, yeah. Oh, and T'Lyn destroys the shuttle so that Rutherford,
yes,
her, and Tandy can build it again.
Which was also sweet in a very intense way. Overall, I disliked this episode a little bit. I feel like the pacing was not great. There were basically 3 or 4 storylines going on, and in such a short amount of time, you're kind of bouncing around all over the place. Like, I tried to keep it as concise as I could in my notes here, but you're going from one scene to the next, to the next, to the next, a little too rapidly for my taste. And I do feel like things worked out a little too conveniently in the end. It's sort of like, oh, your whole family just lost all your wealth. This could lead to some interesting developments for House Tendi. No, because they're just going to take the wealth from this planet that conveniently doesn't want its wealth anymore, and you're fine. So also the war between the Blue Orions and House Tendi is wrapped up extremely quickly, with them just needing to do a race, and then upon both losing the race, now they're working together. It all just wrapped itself up into a neat little bow, a little too much for me. I'm probably nitpicking a little too hard on it, but for me, I definitely like the first episode a bit more.
Yeah, same. I think it bounced around way too much, and to be honest, I think we could have not had the Tendi parts of the episode. I would have been fine with us coming back to her in episode 3 or 4. Give that war between the Greens and the Blues time to actually happen. There were a few things I absolutely loved. The solar sails. I really love the idea of space sailing ships. Star Wars had it with the Geonosian, but Star Trek, I think I'm right in saying that Star Trek has had it first with the Bajoran sailing ship.
They definitely didn't have it in Star Wars back in the original trilogy, and that was a new trilogy thing which happened after DS9.
And again, does call into question the events of Discovery and the Burn. We know that the Bajoran sailing ships were capable of warp flight. We see that in the DS9 episode. So again,
I never even thought about that, actually.
Another one of those interesting technologies that Starfleet just totally forgot about that could have at least allowed for something near warp speed. But yeah, I love the sailing ships, and I really wish that Star Trek would perhaps have some race that's all of their, a bit like the Geonosians, that all of their ships were sort of solar sailing in some way. Because I just think they're really cool. And I also love the idea of a race. Like, personally, I feel Star Trek doesn't do race is enough. So yeah, I love the race. There was some good humor in this episode that did make me laugh as well.
Agreed.
Decapitalization, or decapitalisming of Targalis 9. It's obviously being played up as a parody because, you know, them mentioning that they were replacing all the capitalist buildings with like museums and stuff. They're obviously trying to go for a bit of a parody element and taking the mick out of it. But I think, like you mentioned, it does raise a very interesting question for Star Trek's Federation development as a whole, because we know that as far as contacting the Federation is concerned, the limit is you must be warp capable. Then you can be contacted.
Which it seems clear that these people were long before this moment.
Yes, so we don't really know what happens next. We know that as far as Earth goes, money was one of the things that disappeared within the first 50 years after first contact, if Enterprise is to be believed. We don't quite know whether that happened naturally or whether that was something that the Vulcans, I want to say imposed, but, you know, whether that was something driven by the Vulcans and first contact.
I mean, I guess I always got the impression that it happened naturally for Earth, simply because capitalism was one of the main reasons we ended up going into World War III that almost destroyed us all. But even that is not made explicitly clear, so it's just speculation.
The idea that a society, once they somehow invent no scarcity technology, in this case a replicator, the idea that this destroys capitalism, I've never agreed with this perception that the minute a society develops the replicator, you don't have scarcity, because in a capitalist society, technology like that would be purchased by the highest bidder and either buried because it would destroy the system that gives people wealth and power, or would be a solely handled thing by those already with wealth and power. With Earth, the Third World War destroyed major societies, so I can at least imagine that if they got their hands on a replicator in the process of rebuilding essentially the entirety of the human civilization, I can understand how that would occur. But if you took a built-up society and gave them, and someone invented the replicator, I don't necessarily think that it would destroy capitalism overnight. I think it would actually be kind of terrible. I think there'd be wars and all sorts of shit as a result.
I suppose it is speculation, just because it could lead to the end of capitalism and making people realize, oh, okay, like, we don't need to fight over resources and money anymore. We'll probably just fight over something else. But it could also, as you said, be used for rather nefarious purposes, or simply hoarded by those with wealth and power to begin with. So it's unclear. I feel like this was an opportunity where they could have sort of gone away from just doing a fun parody and actually delve into it just a little bit, like just a tiny little bit. I know they have a short runtime, so they don't have too many options to like really explore that. I do think it is a slight missed opportunity to have explained a little bit as to what's going on here, rather than just go for the laughs like they normally do. But that being said, it is Lower Decks. They're being very on brand with the way that they're doing this, so I can't complain too much, but you know.
I suppose that could be used as a defense of the ending, which is a breach of the Prime Directive.
Is it though?
In my opinion, it is.
I mean, if they're freely giving it away to who they want to.
But it is the Federation directly getting involved in a conflict of another society by providing a benefit to one side of that conflict.
It's not really a conflict, though, because they had already ended said conflict.
Perhaps.
I feel like we're in a gray area here where they could probably get away with it.
Because like, I know if I was the Blues and I had had all my wealth taken away along with the other people in the race, and then the other people in the race, just because of a tenuous link to Starfleet, got all their wealth back, I would definitely be pissed about that and probably wouldn't accept peace with these fuckers and would be probably doing the war thing again.
You make a good point.
Even if it's not a direct breach of the Prime Directive, I think it is at least morally questionable of Starfleet to take the wealth of a whole planet and give it away to one Orion family. That's got to, for the Orions, which is a society, is a wealth-driven society, or is at least a, similar to the Ferengi, a thing-driven society. That's clearly going to affect the balance of power in that society. So I definitely think it's very, very morally questionable.
I would agree. Again, I mostly don't like it just because I think it's a very convenient way to...
No, it is very convenient.
...get over this new plot point that the whole family has just lost their wealth. Again, I think that could have led into an interesting storyline for House Tendi, but they just kind of got rid of it altogether. They're like, nah, well, we got a bunch of wealth right here, so problem solved. And it was just too convenient for me personally. But I can also see on the moral and political side of things that also being not a great way to go about it. And it wasn't even like it was played up for laughs all that much, so I can't even really defend it as like, oh, well, it was a funny joke. I'm like, I mean, it wasn't even really that funny of a joke either, so it just seemed like a very convenient, messy way to solve that.
Yeah, definitely. But like you said, this is Lower Decks, and while it is capable of being very serious and having very important things to say, most of the time it is playing up the Star Trek-isms for laughs and gaffs. So, you know, we have to take it with a pinch of salt. But yeah, apart from that, I don't have much else to say about the episode. I agree with you. I think the first episode was better, but this one wasn't inherently bad. I think I just would have preferred them to have stuck with either the Tendi bit or the Targalis 9 bit.
I agree. I think the episode could have used a bit more focus, particularly the stuff with T'Lyn and Rutherford. I'm like, yeah, this is kind of cute, but like, why are we doing this? I feel like you're distracting me from the stuff that I want to see, which is with either Tendi or Mariner and Boimler. For me, I like the Tendi stuff the most in this episode, which seemed to be the main focus, as the title would suggest. But even then, it didn't get as much focus as I would like because we're busy bouncing around to all these other things. So not a bad episode, just definitely lesser to the first one, I think. But that is about it from us. Please leave any comments, suggestions, leave us a like, it really helps us out, subscribe. And that is about it from me.
And that's it from me.